Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Trevor Cottle, and my colleague Sang Naulu, we're from the Multilingual Department, and we'll be presenting today on kind of an introduction, informative presentation on the type of EL program funding resources that are available, and then the reports that go with them. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just a little preview of our agenda today. We'll be going over just the different types of funding sources. Local funding, not so much, but the state funding we'll be going over, specifically EBF, and then even more specifically ELEBF. And then we'll go extensively into the federal Title III programs of the LIP and the ISEP, and then we'll kind of touch on private school participation in the federal grants, and then also the accountability reports that go with all of these. We will touch on a few of the other federal grants, and again, the reports that go with them, and then kind of a reminder of what applications are going to be coming up and how to apply for these funding sources. Okay, these are just a reminder of some historical and policy timelines and stuff that kind of back what our funding sources, where they've come from, or what sort of court cases have come out of or have produced these specific grants. The Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of '64, the Equal Education Opportunities Act of '74, ESSA, Lau versus Nichols, Castaneda versus Picard, and also Title 14 or Article 14C that's in our school code for transitional bilingual ed. So all of these have kind of driven to where we are now and the funding sources that are available to you to serve your ELs. This is kind of the structure of what we'll be going at. Is this a... Just wonder if there was a pointer. I guess there is a... So what we're talking about, or what I'll be talking about, is kind of the middle part of this block castle that's up here. The bottom part is the foundational part, where the district is responsible for the federal laws and regulations and instituting them, and making sure that all civil rights issues are taken care of through local funding. And then there are instructional programs and services that are at the local level that the district is responsible for. And then we get to the middle level, and that's additional state funding, which is supplemental. And that's kind of where the EBF is. The ELEBF, and then the top layer is where even more additional funding exists for schools that qualify or districts that qualify for Title III funding. So there are different tiers of funding, and the basic is your own local funding. So the local funding sources, they're generated from, of course, property tax and school referendum. And then on top of that, we have evidence-based funding. And that is a formulaic source of funding that came into existence back in 2017. And it replaced an aspect of the transitional bilingual grant that used to be out there. So we'll be talking about that. Then evidence-based funding is combining general state aid and with an emphasis on special education, low income, and English learner populations to generate more funding on top of the general state aid portion. So funding sources, this is kind of a laundry list. This is taken from CDP as a snapshot from the CDP, the Consolidated District Plan that every district is supposed to apply or send ISBE, and it goes through several layers of review. I think it's up to 4 now, right? 4 layers of review of the CDP. 5 layers, okay, so we added a layer. And these are the federal, it's mainly a federal consolidated place where, you know, collaboration at the district level to kind of point funding in the district for those certain populations that need assistance. This is on top of your district funds. Okay, so these are all the federal funds that are available. So those were the federal funds, just in brief, but we'll be talking more specifically about the Title III later on, and that's what Sang will be taking over. Right now we'll be talking about the ELEBF, or English Learner Evidence-Based Funding. And it's the English learner population part of evidence-based funding. So we'll be going over where you find your allotment, how you should track your funds, and then when do you report on the funds, or when your district should report on these funds. So the report that you find, where you'll find this is in the ISBE website, and it's in the finance and funding portion on their web page. And then you go into evidence-based funding, and then it is in a drop-down or 2. It's kind of buried in there, unfortunately. But we do have a link on here, so when we do send our PowerPoint out, you'll be able to hit this link and it'll take you right to the area where you need to go to find this report. The report will look like this. We blacked out the district names and stuff, but you will be able to get to a spreadsheet. It's all in spreadsheets, and it will specifically say English learner distribution. And that is the file that you want, and you'll have to go to the drop-down arrow, and it will come up a search, and you can put in your district, and it should then filter for your district, and you'll be able to find what your allotment is for ELEBF. That would be the English learner population distribution file. I think that's what it's called. Yes. Yep. Okay, and you see there's a live link down here, but I can't click on it myself to show you where it's at. So this PowerPoint will be available to you, and that should be a live link for you to hit and go to. So this spending, this funding, originally, like I said, became a part of a formulaic grant, or not grant, but part of the general state aid, in addition to the other 2 buckets, or the other 2 populations of students, the low income and special education. It's all combined to be in EBF. And before it, EL funding used to be in a grant form and an application. And this is where this screenshot has come from. This came from a grant from 2017 that was the last time that we had a grant for transitional bilingual and TPI funding. This is here to kind of give you an idea that in your district, if you do receive EBF, and this is for districts that generate, well, it should be for any type of funding from, if you have generate $1,000 on up to $499,000, you really should keep track of this funding and decide on what kind of activities you can do with this funding. And for those districts who generate $5,000 or more funding, then that is where those districts need to officially report on how they spend that money. This is just an idea of how you can kind of keep track. You should have some sort of ledger system in your district to kind of keep track and kind of have a plan, and that's what we're talking about here. Is the spending plan that your district will send to the state. It is a much less detailed plan than this, much less. It's more just dollars where you plan to put a certain amount of money in certain tasks, for certain populations. But in this is just an idea of what you can do at the local level to kind of keep track of your state funding, your state EBF funding. So in the EBF Spending Plan, you need to, like I said, keep track of this funding, and there are certain rules that need to be followed when a district is spending this pot of money from the state, from this EBF funding. You can use the funding to pay for excess costs of running an EL program. At least 60% has to be used for instructional related cost. Oftentimes districts, lately, in the evolution of this EBF, it has come to our attention that most districts put this into teacher salaries, when in actuality it can be used for many other things in the instructional bucket. It could be used for supplies and materials too. It could be used for paraprofessionals, and and it is supplemental in nature. You shouldn't be supplanting other positions that you might have already created. So this is because this is supplemental money. So if you're creating a new position, then you can apply this money towards that if you're serving ELs. Another thing is you can use this for possibly offering ESL bilingual classes for certification for your teachers. You can use this pot of money. You can't use Title III money, but you can use this state-funded money. Evidence-based funding spending plan for EL programming. It is due at the end of this month, and we'll be trying to corral districts who are a little behind on that after the date, and we'll be sending notice that you need to send us your plan. And the spending plan must be reviewed for inputs from the Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee. And this is the only part of EBF that parents have a voice to express their concerns or their approval. And it is a requirement in law that parents see the spending plan of how the ELEBF portion is being utilized. And these are, this is for a district that has a BPAC, for those districts that have, 20 or more of a certain language group in their attendance center. Okay, with the ELEBF, an annual summary expenditure report must be submitted by July 20th, 2023. That comes at the end of the year after you've initiated your plan and expended your funding. And again, this expenditure report is a requirement for districts receiving $5,000 or more in EBF funding. Those below don't have to submit an expenditure report. So $1 to $499, you don't have to submit a expenditure report. Also, the bilingual service plan is also kind of tied to this, but it also is a requirement that you submit your bilingual service plan, which is connected to ELEBF in the form of, the type of programming you have for your ELs. And that is due, or was due, August 31st of this year. And if you haven't submitted it yet, you can submit it, quickly, as soon as you can. And then we also have the bilingual delivery report, the program delivery report, and that's for districts who receive that $5,000 or more in ELEBF. Those who have less than that, they don't have to submit one of those. The bilingual service plan is different from the program delivery report, because the bilingual service plan is if you have one EL or 55,000 ELs. So you have to, every district who has an EL needs to submit a plan. Whereas the program delivery report, that's only for those who have $5,000 or more generated from their ELEBF. Just a quick question on if, as a program director of an EL program in your district, what has been your level of involvement in the development of EBF Spending Plan for your EL program on an annual basis? Can I see a show of hands if you have no involvement in this? Okay, can I see a raise of hands? Yeah, okay. So can I see a raise of hands if you have some say in this, on how an ELEBF money is spent? Okay, some say. Well, that's not too bad. And how many of you have full autonomy to make a plan and present it to your superintendent, and they say, oh, this looks great. Okay, we'll go with this. Oh, nice. Okay, we have a couple. So, yeah, it is very important that you all as directors are involved in this decision-making process on how you spend the state money, because it is supplemental, and you all know best, and you have more of a finger on the pulse of your EL program and your teachers, so you can decide where to place that money. Okay, so it's very important. And I guess the first step would be to know how much money you have. So when you go onto that website, you can definitely see how much money you're working with, and you can speak to it a lot clearer. Does anybody have any questions about ELEBF right now?
Yeah, the reason we have this break. Can you hear me? Yeah, the reason we have this breakout is that we want to give you the opportunity as much as time to ask questions. And before we moving on to the federal Title III program, do you have any questions on the ELEBF? Like Trevor said, this is very important. You as a program director, at the end of each fiscal year, you are required to file an electronic expenditure report informing the state how you are using this money. And that breakout spreadsheet spending plan that we showed in here is very important, because this is what you need to kind of plan how you're gonna spend this money. This money are supposed to go toward excess costs that go above and beyond. This is the only part of money that you as a program director has the flexibility of determining what is the need of your EL student and where you want to put the money. Be it hire additional teacher to reduce class size, hire an ESL teachers to pull students out, okay? Hire paraprofessional, hire native English language speaker to provide support, purchase your technologies, professional developments and training coming to the conference like today, where you don't have Title III, you don't have the professional developments funds from your school district. This is the money there is. If you don't get involved in this part of money, then your business manager is gonna say, well, they require us to do a final, at the end of the year expenditure report. We don't know what we spend on this money. We don't even know that we received this money. Mostly your business manager will not be aware of this money. What they do, the easiest and quickest way is that we spend $500,000 in bilingual education in our school district, and here are $50,000. It is easy to put right into teacher salary. Don't know who they are paying for, but teacher salary, and that's the only information we got. You may not realize it now, but if you ever get audited for this, we want to make sure that the money is going toward EL services, and they shouldn't go toward excess costs, not to supplant any core services that are required by the allowances, nickel, or the NCLB requirements or the state requirements.
Mm-hmm. Can you give her yeah, I know it's for the recording. Yeah.
Is there a user-friendly list of what's allowable? I have constant discussions with our business department and receive a no answer often. So is there like a user-friendly list of what we can put in the EBF?
Yeah, we can probably generate that list. We don't have one readily available.
Can you have it by this afternoon, since it's due Monday?
Well, we can kind of reel off a couple, and I think Sang has reeled off a couple too of some more original things to use rather than SOC-all and teacher salaries, just kind of a catch-all. But you could use it for as paying for parents to go to the bilingual summit. You could pay for also assessments. You can pay for assessments with this money. You cannot pay assessments through Title III, such as if you want to buy the new kindergarten WIDA screener, you can purchase that, a nice new box of of assessments for your kindergartners. You can purchase it with this, whereas you can't with Title III money. And again, I think I mentioned, you can pay for professional development, which is classes for teachers to receive their bilingual or ESL endorsement with this type of money too.
You can almost buy anything, use this money for. Just understand that teacher salary that used to be covered by your local school district fund or other state fund. Okay, those are required by law that you have to have a teacher in front of the student. Okay, your ESL teacher is a pull-out teacher. That's extra cost to the bilingual program. Your paraprofessional is not required. That's extra cost. Your teacher to reduce class size, that's extra cost. Anything you can buy except furniture. Okay, anything else is allowable. The only requirements, like earlier, is that 60% of that has to go toward instructional related activities. That means it can be teacher salary, it can be instructional supplies, material, native language material, technology, computer, laptop, okay, professional developments, you know, contractual services, mentor, paraprofessional, parent liaisons, anything you can buy with that. Mhm.
Yeah. Does it cover 100% of their salary, or does it have to? The benefits and all that? If you you at least have to pay the salary, but not, you can pay a portion of it. But, yeah. Right, you can pay a portion of it. And then the benefits, you know, that could be, you know, spent someplace else. You can't just use benefits. Benefits alone cannot be applied to this. It has to, salary has to be attached to it if you choose to do the benefits. Okay.
I'm sorry if I missed this. You said that if the EBF isn't spent, it becomes kind of a catch-all. Is there a date that that money has to be spent by?
Well, it should be spent prior to your expenditure report, and that's a good question because it does carry over, but you should spend your yearly allotment, whatever you get, you know, in full. You should spend that. But whatever you do not spend, it will carry over.
All of it? Whatever's left over? Or is it
Whatever is left over, it will carry over.
Yes, the intent of the money, the allotment is for you to use that year. For those of you who used to have a TBE program, the grant prior 2018, if you did not use that money go back to the general pool, redistributed to all other school districts to jack up the proration for that. And right now, we have substantial number of school districts that since the EBF went into effect, they still have not filed any expenditure report for these. They have 400% of their grant accumulated that they have not spent that money.
And that's a red flag to us when we see that.
And that is red flag. If you went to the monitoring session, that's one of the areas we put it at risk for monitoring, okay, a school district.
Thanks for that question.
Any more questions?
Sherry, down here.
Okay, say you didn't know about this, or you're new in your job at a district, and you looked on Frizz and you saw for FY21 there had been some money in there which was never claimed. Maybe because somebody else had your job before, maybe because your business manager didn't file it. Would that just carry over 1 year into 22, which is already gone? Would it carry over into 23?
Yeah, it would.
So this is more than where you could only carry it over 1 year.
Right.
But now that you know that it exists, you're going to budget it all and list it so you don't have 400% of that, of what your allotment is.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So this is a little bit different because you can carry it over multiple times, but you shouldn't.
You should not.
You shouldn't.
Right.
And those reports that were due, there was one due at the end of August.
Right.
If it hasn't been filed now, but up to now, but it's going to be filed, will it still be accepted if these reports are late?
I think, yeah, I think it's supposed to, yeah, it will be accepted.
Okay, because there are new people in charge. Okay,
We realize that. Yeah.
that's what I wanted to make sure, so that you might have to do catch-up, but if the district does the catch-up, ISB will accept it.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, I think we're gonna move on with the federal portion right now, and Sang, he's gonna talk more about that.
We briefly touch on the local funding referendum. We talk about the EBF. We talk about EBF in general. We cover a little bit of other title grant, federal grants. Okay, all of this funding from either federal, state, or local, your EL students is one of a group of the student subgroup that generate almost all this funding. And service to EL does not limit it to only the EL EBF or the Title III. What is the Title III federal funding? Back in 2002, when NCLB was passed, that was the very first year that federal appropriate a huge amount of Title III funds to provide support to EL students. That was the very first year, 2002. Prior to that, there were Title VII, and that's just a small portion of the money. And the purpose for Title III is, keep in mind, is to supplement what is required under Title VI of Civil Rights, the EEOA, and any other requirements under Law versus Nickel, and all these major class action lawsuits. Okay, so under Title III, there are appropriations of about $26 million annually. Each and every year since 2002, Illinois has got an increase of approximately 500 to 600 each year, the appropriation. Illinois is the 5th state that are receiving the highest amount of appropriation for Title III. We are behind California by a huge, gap here. But the Title III purpose is to provide it support for Yale students as well as immigrant students. So Title III, again, you will see the word supplement versus supplant, supplement not supplanted. Okay, so Title III is like your raspberry on top of your cake and icing. On top of that, to supplement services for Yale students. On top of your other federal. Title III cannot be used to supplant anything, your cake or your icing. Icing means also other federal, such as Title I, Title II, Title IV, ESSER, or IDEA. We throw in ESSER in there because the last 2 years there were ESSER funds, and lots of school districts are, paying additional, hiring additional teacher, additional paraprofessional to service. Now ESSER is drying out, and they want to move those positions into Title III. We'll go over that. Is it allowable or it's not allowable? We'll go over that. But Title III is to supplement. to supplement other federal grant. And any federal grant, you are required to complete a consolidated district plan. You are required to complete the grant periodic report. For 2023, this year, any of you submit a grant periodic reports before? Okay. 2021, you are required to submit 4. And for Title III, 5. In 2022, the administration decided that that's just too much work for everybody, for you guys as well as for us as a state to review that. They changed that. They reviewed the law, the requirements, from the governor's office and all of that, and they reduced that to a semi, which means that in 2022, you are required to submit only 2. Okay? Half of the school districts that received Title III still have not submitted their second semi-annual report, which was due July 30th. Okay, for our Title III, there is 1 extra report for 2022 to cover the months of July and August. That you won't be able to access that report because the way our system is set up is that we cannot just open that for those 2 months. We may have to wait until January 23rd to open that report. So if you cannot access the grant periodic report for 2022, the 3rd report, don't worry about that. We'll notify you when the report is available. Then for all except the EBF, your funds come on a monthly basis as part of your EBF funds to your school district, and that fund includes your EBF. It's not going to be a separate pot of money coming to your school district. It's already included in the EBF funds. Okay, you just know that how much you have available for that this year. Again, Title III Illinois received in 2023 school year, the appropriation for Illinois is about $26 million. Of that $26 million, $25 million, 95% go toward LEA sub-grant for Title III LIPS and for immigrant student education program. Of that 95% or $25 million that go toward sub-grant, about 97% go to your LIP program, Language Instruction Education Program, to serve your EL student. The other 2.75% or 3% go toward your immigrant student education program. This year, we have about 256 school districts, 56 school districts that are receiving Title III funds. And we may have somewhere between 30 to 45 school districts that will be eligible for Title III ISAP. Purpose of a Title III is to improve the education of EL students by assisting them to learn English and meet challenging state academic content and standard. Purpose of the ISAP is to enhance instruction opportunity for immigrants and youth. Immigrants are any student who were born outside of the United States and have not been enrolled in any of the U.S. schools for more than 3 full academic years. The Title III grants, unlike any of your other grants, has a fiscal year a little different from the other grant. And it starts September 1st and ended August 31st. Any school district that submit their applications to us prior to September 1st will have a begin date September 1st and 31st. We have a handful of school districts that receive Title III fund that still have not submitted their application to us. For those of you, if you have not submitted your application, you will be required to email Joanne Clyde, our director, a short justification why your application is late and request that we accept your application and grant you permission to accept your application so that we can accept your application for 2023. We have about 50 school districts that have not submitted their 2023 LIPS application. So you need to get on it. If you have not submitted, if you are not sure, call our office, find out to see if that has been submitted yet. Title III funding allocation is a formula based, and it is based on the number of your EL students reported using the fall housing report, okay? And we extract that number of students around March 31st, April. Around that time, we have the exact date when we're gonna extract that number of students to determine your allocation. And we, at the same time, when you submit your intent, we also included, if you have any private student count, that student is add on top of your public schools enrollment. And that and then whatever the number you have, that generate your funding allocation. So what do you need to do to be eligible? All school districts identify EL students are eligible to apply for your Title III LIP. And all of you, if you have EL students, you generate the fund. Funding is based on the number of EL student formulas. Your EL student in private school plus your in public school plus your EL student in private school. If the private school choose to participate and if they identify EL student. District wishing to apply for Title III must submit your intended to apply. We only have $25 million. We have 645 school districts approximately that are identified EL students. We have approximately 254 school districts that are applying for Title III. Another 500 did not apply, okay? So that's just so that if you have not applied it, what is Title III? You can apply it. The only requirements for Title III LIP is that if your district does not generate at least $10,000, you cannot apply as a single district. If you have fewer than 100 students or 10,000, if your district does not generate $10,000, you can join another school district, forming a consortium and applies as a consortium as long as one of the consortium members agree to be the admin district. Okay, and why is 10,000? 10,000 is the requirements of the Fed. But how do you determine whether your school district made that 10,000? Beginning since 2022, we used to have about $275 allocation per student. Our number has rapidly increased, but the appropriation of the Fed has not been kept up with that. So the per student allocation has come from 275 to 200 to 185 to 120, 115. 2 years ago, we went down as far as 85, but this year we are coming back up to $100 per student. So the threshold is that at the time we pull your data, you need to have at least 100 students to generate $10,000. If you don't have that number, we notify you that, hey, you know, you want to get this money, you need to look at your neighbor to see if they have applied for Title III. You look at your neighbor who may wants to access this money. If they don't have the number, you guys can get together and form consortium and submit your application so that you can access this money. So for 2023 here, the per student allocation for LIB is $100 per student. What can you, the next three slide is the requirements of the activity and what you can use Title III for. Title III is a supplemental funding for your program. Therefore, Title III funds cannot be used to pay for teacher salary for those teachers who are required by law, by our state law, by other federal EEOA, by Title VI, that you have to have a teacher in front of the student. Title III cannot pay that. That is the responsibility of the state and other federal requirements. But Title III can go pay for teacher salary if that salary is for summer and or after school program, before or after school program. And if for those of you that attended Ray Clemens' session, Title III doesn't have to go into every school in your school district. The fund comes to you as a district, but you can take a look at your population EL. When you do a need analysis, if you feel that, hey, this school district is the one that does not make a progress toward proficiency, and these are the students, we want to focus our Title III money for this school, for this group of the students, you have that flexibility, okay? It can be used to supplement instructional material for ESL. Your state requires that you have to have a textbook for your student, be it native language. The curriculum that you have for your school district, that has to also need to be make available to that. On top of that, you have your EBF that you can use that money to buy material. But on top of that, you have your Title III. If you can use your Title III that, hey, we don't have any more money from our local, we don't have any more money from our EBF, and we need native language for the Arabic language or other language, you can use your Title III funds for that, okay? You can use that for technology. You can use that for laptop for the student, Chromebooks for student. But when you buy this technology equipment, you need to let us know that how many units you're buying, and all those units cost $500 or more, so that we know whether you budget those equipment appropriately. You can also use the money to pay for paraprofessional. Why didn't we allow that to pay for teacher but paraprofessional? Because paraprofessional is not required, okay? No law in the state saying that every classroom has to have a paraprofessional. Paraprofessional is extra cost. So that is supplemental cost. Instruction is one activity required under Title III, so you need to have in Function 1000 open for this as one activity. It can be salary for extended day or extended school year. You can pay for fringe benefit. You can pay for material, contractual services, instructional contractual services. You can pay for supplies, material, or equipment. Second activity that are required under the activity that you have to have, and they fall under what we call improvements of instruction. Improvements of instruction cover a variety of areas: professional developments, EL program developments, curriculum, pay for your bilingual ESL teacher after school hours or during the summer to develop material, instructional material that are appropriate for them. Pay for your teachers in the summers to align your EL curriculum with the standards. These are all the things that you can do. Planning, is also improvements of instruction. These are above and beyond the requirements of your local school district and the state. ESL bilingual endorsement, we do allow it only if your district has, fully staffed to serve EL students. If you don't have a bilingual teacher in your school district to serve your EL population, and you say, hey, we're going to use Title III to pay for these gen ed teachers to get their ESL endorsements to serve the student. No, you cannot do that because you are required by the state that you have to have that position to serve the student. Therefore, you cannot use Title III to pay for that. That is considered supplanting. That is considered buying service to meet your state requirements, and that is not allowed. So, if you want to use it, you can use EBF, that's fine. But Title III, you cannot because that would be supplanting. But if you say, well, already have enough teachers to provide adequate service to our EL students, but we want to build capacity in our school district. We want all our Gen Ed who wants to go back and get their ESL, and we want to be able to pay for that. Yes, you can. But you have to clearly state that in your budget to us so that we can, assure us that you already have sufficient number of staff to serve your EL student. Parent liaison, you can use that. That is not required of the state. This is parent involvement activity is one other activity under Title III. If any of your budget does not include these 3 activities, it will be returned to you. Okay? It didn't say how much you're going to have to put it under each of this, how much money, but it has to be of sufficient funding that it makes sense. You cannot say, hey, they want improvement in professional developments, I budget $200. I have $50,000, I budget $250 for professional. That doesn't make sense to us at all. Professional development has to be something of a continuous, that have a long-term effect, and just one workshop is not going to cut it, okay? So $250 for that does not, for one registration, that does not going to cut it, okay? So we're going to come back to you and say, this, it's not sufficient enough to do a meaningful professional developments. And these are the money that another activity, parent liaison, you can do classes for EL parents and their children after school to help support parents of ELs and how they can support their children in the classroom. You can buy supplies and material, books in the native language, classroom material so parents can take it home, or material for parents to take it home. You can buy purchase of services, bringing to speakers. You know something that I attended a meeting, one of the sessions talked about with this age of technology, and you have Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee. And now we are moving into multimedia. This is one area that you can look at, maybe getting equipments, getting some services that, hey, here are our Bilingual Parent Advisory Council. We want to have some equipments ready so that we can, any activity coming up, we can share with all EL parents, So that's probably one area that. Now, some activity that we don't allow here. 5 reasons for application disapproved. Many times about more than 70% of our school district, when they submit their application for the first time, their budget were returned for correction. Partly, these are the 5 most common issues that we come across that we have to return your application. The first one, activity do not cover all the requirements of the grant. You budget money for instructional related activity, but you fail to budget the money for parents' involvements or professional developments, then we have to return because the Fed required that 3 activity has to be there. Sometimes you just put down benefits. We know it's a benefit. You provide us the function and the object, but you did not tell us, is that for the TRS? Is that for the FICA? Is that for medical? We don't need to know how much for each of that, but give us that what you are paying, because fringe benefit can also include tuition that you reimburse directly to your teacher for taking classes or endorsements. So we want to make sure you break down, tell us what fringe benefits. Difference between the contractual service versus salary, okay? If an employee is, whether they're doing summer school or they go to a conference, if they are employee of your school district, then they are required to pay tax. There are maybe TRS need to be withhold for what they got paid under Title III, so you put them under salary. Contract is only if you paying for services from an outsider, okay, a vendor, and not your employee. So be very clear on that. Okay, when you send it to us. Because if there are staff in your school, then all go under stipend, under salary, or salary excel if it's a summer school. Difference between licensing fees and material. Right now, lots of school districts are purchasing licensing fee, Imagine Learning, and all these other, EL program via web-based, okay? These are contractual fees. If you don't own it, you only pay for the service to have access to their instruction or their material, okay? Then it's all contractual fees because you don't have the right to own it and give it out or give it to anybody. But if it's a program software that you purchase and it's owned, you own it, you install into that computer, in the classroom, you own it, you can take with you, then that is material. So be very clear on that when you pay for that, you need to let us know contractual fees or licensing fees so that we have enough information to see if that should be budgeted under contract or materials. Because you will be monitored, and sometimes the monitoring team is going to say, hey, you were going to buy this, show us where your materials. Okay. Difference between equipments versus supplies and material. If you buy a case load of truck of supplies and material booked for your student costing $50,000, we are not going to ask you to put that as equipment because it costs more than $5,000. $500. When we talk about equipment, we talk about a piece of equipment that costs $500 or more, and you need to be very specific. You put instructional materials and all of that, but then you throw in a computer in there or a laptop, and you have a $50,000 in there. We don't have enough information to know whether your Chromebook costs $499 or $500 or more. So that's when you need to kind of detail it and let us know. Okay, most of the time we also disapprove. Teacher for student instruction during the school day. Pay for teacher, request to pay for a teacher's salary during the school day. No, that is not an allowable expenditure. Translation of the school and district communication or document. Any notification, home language survey, that's the state requirements. Any regular communication that you send out to parents of gen ed student, students' parents, or bilingual parents, those information, if you want to translate, that should come out of your local school cost. That is a requirement of Office of Civil Rule, right? That you have to make it equitable to all students in different language. Translation is not allowed unless it is specific to the parental outreach activities that you are paying with Title III. And you said, today we're going to have this activity for the Polish, for the Spanish, and for the Gujarati family to discuss, to have some training on this activity. But many of these parents don't, and we're going to pay under Title III. But some of these parents don't speak English. Therefore, we need a translator, and we're going to provide translation. That, we want to allow that. But translation in general to meet the requirements of the law is not. We also don't allow any purchase of English language proficiency test that is used to identify student. Okay? Any. The only time we allow you to purchase English language proficiency test or any activity relate to the administration of English language proficiency is only if that is for the private school. The private schools are not covered under our state and federal law. So therefore, we allow that. But other than that, English language proficiency test is not allowed. And then, but if you are paying for any additional assessments, such as Spanish native language assessment to determine whether you need to place that student in a full-time or part-time program, yes, we do allow that because that is supplemental testing. Positions that were previously paid for by other source of grant, the EBF, your local funds, or other Title III funds. If you are going to, let's say you don't have money, or your superintendent or your fiscal say, can we use Title III to pay for this position? The answer is no. Position that used to be paid for by Title III other source. If you move that to Title III, that is considered supplanting. Title III application, reporting documents. To be eligible, you need to submit the intent to apply. That usually come out in January. Okay, that is applied to both the Title III LIP and ISAP. Consult with private schools so that we know whether you have a private school participation, how many of them, and then we can include that in your calculation. Submit your consolidated district plan. You need to submit your Title III application to us. At the end of the year, you need to submit a GATA report. You need to also require to submit a program delivery report so that we can aggregate those data and report it to the Fed. To get your money, Title III, unlike the EBF, you don't need to file any expenditure report except the last one to tell us, okay, how you use that money. But for Title III, you are required to submit a quarterly expenditure report so that you can reimburse for what you spend. Immigrants are the same. The only difference is that immigrants, students are not all immigrant students are EL students, okay? So you want to make sure that when you budget for, most of your immigrant students are EL students, but not all of them. So you may have students from Great Britain, some other English-speaking country. If that is your larger number, you want to make sure that they have access to some of the training. Your parents have some access to training that you'll provide, how to adjust to life here in the U.S. or any others support that you can provide it, and immigrants. There's no limit, although you see the 10,000 at the bottom, we should have taken that out. There's no limit to how much your immigrants you must generate in order to apply for the immigrant. You don't have to be Title III LIP to apply for immigrants program. But the only requirements is that SR required that eligibility based on this year, current year's count. And to be eligible, you need to indicate it in your intent to apply that you're gonna apply for ISAP. And you need to have at least 10 immigrant students enrolled in the current year and show that you have an increase of either 50 students or 3% from the average of the previous 2 years to be eligible. So ISAP is a little differently. You may be eligible for this year, but for not next year because you may not show that 50 student or 3% increase. How much time do we have? Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through this and be on the lookout for your Title III. Your intended to apply is coming out. Again, the whole process of submitting that is about the same. The 2023 application ISAP for this year still have not coming out because the final expenditure report is September 20th. So all school districts that have ISAP this year, if you have a carryover, the application will be coming out soon with your carryover, loaded onto it. For the new school district, we wouldn't know that until we have that count of immigrants, and that is due sometime in November of this year to determine whether you are eligible. If you are, then we'll notify you with your allocation. Again, Title III reporting documentation is again GATA. We talked about that. For a quarterly expenditure report, you need to submit program delivery report. Reporting documents, I touch on that. In 2022, we have a 3 report total. Moving to 23, we will only have 1, but with Title III, you will be required to probably still submit 2. Here is the form that we usually ask you to upload into our grant periodic report. We will be revise this column on column B to reflect the annual. So your major activity, you need to put it in here, and then you can just tell us, hey, is that implemented? Has that been not been implemented? Who is the beneficiary, and how many people are participating in this activity? What is your short-term outcome of this activity, and what is your long-term outcome? Again, expenditure report quarterly. If you don't have access to IWAS, make sure you talk to your superintendent, because many of you may have only read-only access to your application, your financial information, but you don't have the authority to complete or to submit any of these reports. So make sure you are getting the permission from your. In addition to that, you have program delivery report. All Title III LIP districts are required to complete that and submit it to ISBE. Located in IWAS 2 is that report. This is the website. If you click on this link, it will give you the key dates and the multilingual departments, not only about grant and report that you need to submit, but any other activity related to EL student. So make sure you check on this. Okay. I think that's pretty much the end about, we kind of rush a little bit at the end because we are at the end of our session here.
We can field some questions. We still have maybe 5 minutes before the next session starts. So.
Yeah, question.
Or you can come up and just ask us. Thank you.